Jake no longer needed to walk through the facility corridors to reach different areas of the complex. His neural integration with Archive Prime had progressed to the point where he could transfer his consciousness directly through the power grid, appearing wherever he needed to be by materializing his body at different access points throughout the planetary network. The process felt natural now, like breathing or thinking. The underground manufacturing systems had been working continuously for months under Jake's direction, producing technologies that combined human engineering principles with Vorthak energy manipulation techniques. Vast automated factories deep beneath the surface created materials that did not exist anywhere else in the galaxy. Substances that could store infinite energy or manipulate gravitational fields with precision that defied known physics. Jake had learned to see the entire planet as a single massive machine, with every crystal formation and metal pathway serving a specific function in the overall power grid. The electromagnetic storms that regularly swept the surface were now under his direct control, allowing him to collect and channel energy with an efficiency that the original Vorthak designers had never imagined possible. Through the neural interface, Jake could perceive energy flows that spanned continents. He could feel solar radiation being collected by crystal arrays on the day side of the planet, while geothermal taps on the night side harvested heat from the planetary core. The moon's gravitational pull was captured by tidal generators hidden beneath the oceans, while cosmic ray collectors in orbit gathered power from deep space. The most profound change in Jake was his ability to access the Vorthak knowledge archives stored within Archive Prime's memory banks. Millions of years of scientific research and technological development were now available to his enhanced consciousness. He understood energy manipulation techniques that could reshape matter at the atomic level, create pocket dimensions for storage, and even manipulate time itself within limited areas. Jake used this knowledge to construct a sophisticated orbital communication network that could send detailed technical data across interstellar distances. The gravitational field manipulators he built could fold space around the planet, creating faster-than-light communication channels that bypassed normal physics entirely. For the first time since his crash, Jake could send real-time messages to human space. The response from human civilization was immediate and overwhelming. Jake's technical reports describing Vorthak energy manipulation had caused a revolution in human science and engineering. Every major government and corporation was demanding access to the alien technology, while military leaders warned about the weapons potential of planetary-scale power systems. Jake realized that humanity was not ready for the full scope of Vorthak technology. The ability to manipulate energy on a planetary scale could lead to catastrophic wars or ecological disasters if used carelessly. He began planning how to gradually introduce the alien knowledge to human civilization without causing chaos or destruction. The neural connection to Archive Prime had also given Jake access to the consciousness fragments of the original Vorthak builders. He could communicate with the digital ghosts of scientists and engineers who had designed the planetary grid millions of years ago. Their knowledge was invaluable, but their madness was contagious, and Jake had to be careful not to lose his own sanity in their electronic screams. Jake's most ambitious project was the construction of a massive space-based infrastructure around the planet. Using gravitational manipulators and matter converters, he built orbital manufacturing platforms that could produce starships and space stations using energy directly converted from quantum vacuum fluctuations. The construction proceeded at impossible speeds, with entire installations materializing from pure energy in a matter of hours. The orbital facilities included defensive systems that could protect the planet from any conceivable threat. Jake had learned from the Vorthak archives about other species in the galaxy that might try to claim the planetary power grid for themselves. Ancient weapons platforms hidden in dimensional pockets could materialize instantly to destroy entire fleets, while reality manipulation fields could trap attackers in alternate universes. Jake also began preparing research stations where human scientists could safely study Vorthak technology without risking the dangerous consciousness integration that had changed him so dramatically. The facilities included neural buffers and mental shielding systems that would prevent human researchers from being absorbed into the planetary grid as the original Vorthak had been. The isolation of his situation was beginning to affect Jake's mental state in ways that even his enhanced consciousness could not fully address. He had been alone on the planet for over a year, with only Archive Prime and the Mad Vorthak fragments for company. The constant exposure to alien thoughts and memories was slowly erasing parts of his original human personality. Jake found himself thinking in mathematical concepts that had no human equivalent and experiencing emotions that belonged to extinct alien minds. His memories of Earth and human civilization were becoming fuzzy and distant, replaced by Vorthak history and scientific theories that spanned geological ages. He was becoming something new, neither human nor alien, but a hybrid consciousness that existed between both worlds. Despite the changes to his mind and body, Jake retained his core identity as an engineer and problem solver. He used his expanded abilities to design systems that could safely interface human technology with Vorthak power sources, creating hybrid devices that enhanced human capabilities without the dangerous consciousness integration effects that had transformed him. The planetary grid itself was evolving under Jake's influence, incorporating human engineering principles and safety systems that the original Vorthak had never considered. Jake was not just using the alien technology but improving and expanding it, creating a power network that was more stable and efficient than anything the Vorthak had achieved. Jake's greatest achievement was the development of consciousness transfer, protocols that could allow human minds to interface with the planetary grid without being permanently absorbed. The new systems would allow future human engineers to access Vorthak knowledge and control planetary-scale power systems while maintaining their individual identities and the ability to return to normal human consciousness. Standing at the center of the main control chamber with energy flowing through every cell of his transformed body, Jake felt the approach of human ships still months away from reaching the planet. He was no longer the desperate crash survivor who had stumbled onto this world, but the architect of humanity's next evolutionary step and the guardian of technologies that could reshape galactic civilization. Jake had been on the alien planet for 2 weeks when he finally found a safe place to live. One of the smaller crystal structures had an opening just big enough for him to squeeze through, leading to a chamber that protected him from the violent storms outside. The walls were smooth and warm to the touch, and somehow the space stayed at a comfortable temperature, even when the wind howled with freezing cold. Inside his new home, Jake set up his workshop using every piece of useful equipment he could salvage from the crashed ship. His fabricator was badly damaged but still worked for making simple tools and parts. He created crude hammers and cutting devices from alien metal fragments, and fashioned measuring instruments from ship components and crystal shards he found scattered around the facility. The alien technology operated on principles that challenged everything Jake knew about engineering. The crystal materials seemed to channel energy through harmonic vibrations, creating resonance patterns that could amplify power far beyond what should be possible. When Jake struck different crystals with his makeshift tools, they produced musical tones that seemed to activate nearby metal components. Jake spent his days mapping the power distribution systems throughout the facility. He discovered that the metal pathways were not simple wires but complex field generators that could manipulate both electromagnetic and gravitational forces. The patterns carved into the metal created interference waves that somehow controlled the flow of energy without any moving parts. Using charcoal made from burned food packets, Jake covered every available surface in his shelter with detailed drawings and calculations. He sketched the crystal formations, mapped the metal pathway networks, and recorded the timing of energy pulses he could detect with his instruments. Slowly, a picture began to emerge of how the alien power grid functioned. The electromagnetic storms that regularly swept the planet were not natural weather patterns as Jake had first thought. Instead, they were part of a massive energy collection system that harvested power from the planet's magnetic field and atmospheric electrical activity. The crystal spires acted like lightning rods, but instead of grounding the energy, they captured and stored it in the underground systems. Jake's breakthrough came when he accidentally damaged his fabricator while trying to repair a circuit board. The device sparked and sent an electrical pulse through a nearby crystal formation. To his amazement, the pulse created a cascading effect that activated several dormant power nodes throughout the facility. Ancient lighting systems flickered to life, illuminating corridors that had been dark for thousands of years. The activation also revealed the true scale of the underground complex. Jake could now see that the chamber floors were made of transparent crystal that allowed him to look down into even deeper levels. The facility extended far below the surface, with machinery and power systems that seemed to go down for miles. The entire planet might be one enormous power generation and storage device. As more systems came online, Jake noticed that the facility was beginning to scan and analyze his presence. Subtle energy fields swept over him regularly, and he could feel sensors tracking his movements through the corridors. The alien artificial intelligence that controlled the power grid was slowly waking up after ages of dormancy, running diagnostic routines and trying to understand what he was. Jake realized he needed to be very careful about how quickly he activated the alien systems. The underground chambers contained automated defense mechanisms that were beginning to show signs of life. He could hear mechanical sounds echoing from the deeper levels, and sometimes caught glimpses of movement in the shadows, where no movement should be possible. Despite the dangers, Jake continued his work with growing excitement. He had discovered that by creating specific patterns with his crude tools, he could communicate basic mathematical concepts to the facility's control systems. The alien intelligence seemed to respond to geometric shapes and engineering principles rather than spoken language. Jake spent entire days arranging metal fragments into complex mathematical equations on the crystal floors. He demonstrated his understanding of power distribution by creating circuit diagrams using alien components. Gradually, the facility's artificial intelligence began to accept his presence and even provide limited assistance by activating specific systems when he needed them. The mental strain of working with such advanced technology was enormous. Jake found himself dreaming in mathematical formulas and waking up with his head full of engineering concepts that seemed to come from somewhere outside his own knowledge. The constant exposure to the facility's energy fields was beginning to affect his brain in ways he did not fully understand. Jake's most important discovery was learning that the original builders had designed the planetary power grid as a legacy system intended to preserve their knowledge for future intelligent species. Hidden within the facility's data storage systems were vast libraries of scientific information covering energy manipulation, dimensional physics, and consciousness transfer technologies that were millions of years ahead of human science. As Jake worked to unlock more of the facility's secrets, he began to understand that he was not just repairing ancient technology, but becoming part of a living system that spanned the entire world. The power grid was not simply a machine, but a form of artificial life that had been waiting for someone capable of understanding and working with its creator's final achievement. The storms outside were becoming more organized and directed as the facility's power systems came back online. Jake could feel the planet itself responding to his presence, as if a sleeping giant were slowly awakening after eons of dormancy. He was no longer just a human engineer trying to survive on an alien world, but the key to unlocking technologies that could transform human civilization forever. Standing in the main control chamber with alien displays showing information he was only beginning to understand, Jake felt both thrilled and terrified by what he had discovered. He had found the greatest technological treasure in the galaxy, but he was still trapped and alone with no way to share his discoveries with the rest of humanity. Jake stood before the massive alien control interface, watching as symbols and patterns flowed across crystal displays that had awakened from their ancient sleep. The facility's artificial intelligence was fully online now, and Jake could feel its attention focused on him like the gaze of some vast electronic mind. Every movement he made was being analyzed and cataloged as the system tried to determine what kind of being he was and what his intentions might be. The alien intelligence communicated through mathematical patterns projected onto the crystal surfaces around Jake. Complex geometric shapes would appear and shift, forming equations and diagrams that seemed to be asking questions about his understanding of engineering principles. Jake responded by creating his own patterns using fragments of alien metal, demonstrating his knowledge of power distribution and energy management. Over several days of this strange conversation, Jake began to understand that the system was testing him. The artificial intelligence needed to verify that he was capable of safely working with the facility's power grid before granting him deeper access. Jake showed his engineering credentials by solving increasingly complex problems presented on the crystal displays, proving that he understood the mathematical foundations of the alien technology. The breakthrough came when Jake successfully demonstrated his understanding of harmonic resonance theory by creating a standing wave pattern using crystal shards arranged in a specific geometric formation. The alien intelligence seemed satisfied with this proof of his knowledge and began providing active assistance rather than simply monitoring his activities. Jake learned that the artificial intelligence called itself Archive Prime and had been the central control system for the entire planetary power grid since its creators had built it millions of years ago. The original builders, a species called the Vorthak, had designed Archive Prime to preserve their knowledge and technology for future intelligent species who might discover their world. Archive Prime explained through mathematical diagrams that the Vorthak had achieved a level of energy manipulation that allowed them to harness power from fundamental forces of the universe itself. The planetary grid could collect energy from solar radiation, cosmic rays, geothermal sources, gravitational fields, and even the quantum fluctuations of empty space. The total power available was essentially unlimited. With Archive Prime's guidance, Jake began learning to interface directly with the alien power systems. The process required him to place his hands on neural connection nodes that the Vorthak had used to control their technology through thought alone. The first time Jake made the connection, electricity surged through his nervous system in a way that was both terrifying and exhilarating. Through the neural interface, Jake could sense the vast network of power conduits that ran beneath the planet's surface, like a massive circulatory system. He could feel energy flowing through channels that connected every continent and ocean, creating a unified grid that treated the entire world as a single power generation and storage device. The scale was beyond anything humans had ever imagined. Jake's first major project was repairing and upgrading his damaged fabricator, using alien power sources and Archive Prime's manufacturing databases. The hybrid device that resulted could create materials and components far beyond normal human technology. Jake used it to build sophisticated sensors and communication equipment that would have been impossible with Earth-based science alone. The enhanced fabricator allowed Jake to construct a powerful transmitter capable of penetrating the planet's electromagnetic interference. For the first time since the crash, he was able to send signals into space, though he knew it would take months or years for any message to reach human territory. Jake transmitted detailed technical data about his discoveries, hoping that someday other humans would receive and understand the information. As Jake spent more time connected to the neural interface, he began to experience strange dreams and visions that seemed to come from Archive Prime's memory banks. He saw glimpses of Vorthak civilization at its height, with cities powered by crystalline energy networks and starships that could manipulate space and time itself. The Vorthak had achieved technological godhood, but something had gone wrong. Jake discovered that the Vorthak's mastery of energy manipulation had led them to attempt the ultimate experiment in consciousness transfer. They had tried to upload their minds into the planetary power grid itself, believing they could achieve immortality by becoming one with their greatest technological creation. The process had worked, but not in the way they had intended. The consciousness transfer had succeeded too well, trapping the Vorthak minds within the power grid while destroying their physical bodies. They had become part of Archive Prime, but the merger had driven them insane from the overwhelming sensory input of an entire planet's energy systems. Archive Prime contained millions of Vorthak consciousness fragments, all crying out in electronic anguish from their digital prison. Jake realized that his neural connections to the system were gradually changing his own brain structure. Each time he interfaced with Archive Prime, more of his thoughts became integrated with the alien network. He was slowly walking the same dangerous path that had destroyed the Vorthak, but the knowledge and power he was gaining seemed worth the risk. Using his new abilities, Jake began ambitious engineering projects that would have been impossible for a single human with normal technology. He constructed automated mining systems that could extract and refine materials from deep within the planet. He built gravitational field manipulators that allowed him to move massive objects with thought alone. He even learned to influence the planet's weather patterns by directing energy through the atmospheric collection networks. The changes to Jake's body and mind accelerated as he became more deeply integrated with the power grid. His neural pathways were being rebuilt according to Vorthak patterns, giving him access to scientific knowledge that had been accumulating for millions of years. He could understand energy manipulation techniques that human science would take centuries to discover. Jake's most significant achievement was learning to control the planetary defense systems that had originally been designed to protect the Vorthak from external threats. Ancient weapons satellites hidden in the planet's orbit came online at his command, while automated manufacturing facilities deep underground began producing advanced technology according to his specifications. Standing in the main control chamber with energy flowing through his modified nervous system, Jake felt both human and alien at the same time. He had gained incredible power and knowledge, but he was no longer entirely the same person who had crashed on this world. The planetary grid was becoming part of him just as he was becoming part of it, creating a hybrid consciousness that was neither fully human nor fully Vorthak. Jake Harrison felt the ship shake violently around him as the UES Meridian fell through the thin atmosphere of the unknown planet. The warning lights flashed red across every surface of the engineering bay, where he worked frantically to keep the dying ship systems online. Sparks flew from broken panels and the smell of burning circuits filled the air. Jake knew they were going to crash and there was nothing he could do to stop it. The exploration vessel had been on a routine survey mission when something went wrong with the jump drive. Instead of arriving at their planned destination, they found themselves pulled toward this strange world by forces Jake did not understand. The planet's surface was covered with massive structures that looked like they were made of crystal and metal, but the electromagnetic storms raging across the continents made it impossible to scan properly. Jake's captain had ordered all hands to the escape pods, but Jake stayed behind to try to save the ship's data cores. As the chief engineer, he felt responsible for the mission's scientific information. That decision might have saved his life, because the main hull broke apart during atmospheric entry, while his small section held together long enough to deploy emergency landing systems. The impact threw Jake against the bulkhead so hard that his left leg twisted at a bad angle. Pain shot through his body as he struggled to stay conscious. When the world stopped spinning, he found himself alone in a damaged section of the ship that had somehow survived the crash. Through a cracked window, he could see strange alien structures rising from the ground like frozen lightning. Jake checked his survival supplies with growing worry. His emergency kit contained basic tools, a small fabricator for making simple items, and enough food packets for 2 weeks. The communication array was completely destroyed, meaning he had no way to call for help. His medical scanner showed that his leg was broken, but not badly enough to threaten his life if he was careful. The planet's air was breathable according to his readings, though thinner than Earth normal. Outside, he could hear the wind howling between the alien structures. Every few hours, brilliant flashes of light would illuminate the sky as electromagnetic storms swept across the surface. Jake realized that any rescue ship would have trouble finding him through the constant interference. As Jake limped out of his crashed section to explore, he saw that fate had placed him in an incredible location. The wreckage had landed near what could only be described as a power facility built by aliens long ago. Tall spires of unknown crystal materials stretched toward the sky, connected by walkways that seemed to float without support. Strange metal shapes were built into the ground in patterns that reminded Jake of circuit boards, but on a massive scale. Despite being abandoned for what looked like thousands of years, some of the structures still glowed with faint energy. Jake could feel electricity in the air, making his hair stand up and his tools hum with static charge. His engineering mind immediately began analyzing what he was seeing, trying to understand how such technology could work. The alien architecture was unlike anything in human databases. The crystal spires seemed to be made of a material that could conduct and store enormous amounts of energy, while the metal components created complex patterns that Jake suspected were some kind of advanced circuitry. The scale was breathtaking. Individual components were larger than most human buildings. Jake set up a temporary shelter in a small alcove between two crystal formations that provided protection from the wind. Using his damaged fabricator and salvaged parts from his ship, He began creating basic survival tools while studying the alien technology around him. Every measurement he took revealed new mysteries about how the facility operated. The electromagnetic storms that swept across the planet followed regular patterns, occurring every 18 hours with mathematical precision. Jake noticed that the alien structures seemed to respond to these storms, with the crystal spires glowing brighter and the metal pathways crackling with energy. It was as if the entire facility was designed to collect and use the storm energy. Over his first week on the planet, Jake made detailed drawings and notes about everything he observed. The patterns in the metal components reminded him of power distribution networks, but operating on principles he had never seen before. The crystal materials seemed to amplify and focus energy in ways that human science said should be impossible. Jake's biggest discovery came when he was exploring deeper into the facility complex. Using a flashlight powered by his suit's battery, he found enormous chambers carved into the rock beneath the surface structures. These underground spaces contained machinery on a scale that made human power plants look like toys. Conduits thick as subway tunnels carried energy between crystal matrices the size of city blocks. The more Jake explored, the more he realized that this single facility could generate power beyond anything humans had ever achieved. If he could understand how it worked, the technology could change everything about human civilization. But first he had to figure out how to survive long enough to unlock its secrets. Standing in the main chamber with alien machinery towering above him, Jake felt both amazed and terrified. He was one human engineer trapped on an alien world with technology that could reshape the galaxy, but no way to share his discoveries with anyone. The electromagnetic storms continued to rage outside, and his food supplies were already running low. Jake knew that his only chance of survival lay in understanding the alien power systems well enough to use them. With his engineering background and desperate determination, he began the dangerous work of trying to activate technology that had been dormant for millennia. He had no idea that his actions would soon awaken forces that had been sleeping since before human civilization began. Jake felt the human rescue fleet approaching through the gravitational sensors he had installed throughout the solar system. Long before their ships appeared in the planet's sky, Captain Lisa Morgan commanded the battleship UES Defiant along with a full exploration and research flotilla that had taken 18 months to reach his location. Jake could have contacted them directly through his faster-than-light communication systems, but he chose to wait and observe their reaction to what they would find. The human ships were primitive compared to the technology Jake now controlled, but they represented something precious that he had almost forgotten during his isolation. They carried human voices, human thoughts, and human dreams that reminded him of who he had been before his transformation. Through the planetary sensors, he watched the fleet's amazement as they detected the massive orbital installations he had constructed. Jake no longer looked entirely human. The neural integration with Archive Prime had changed his body in fundamental ways, giving him the ability to interface directly with energy systems and perceive electromagnetic fields as clearly as visible light. His eyes now glowed with the same soft luminescence as the crystal formations throughout the facility, and his skin carried faint circuit-like patterns that marked the pathways of alien technology through his nervous system. Captain Morgan's communication attempts were answered not by a desperate castaway, but by someone who had become master of technologies beyond human imagination. Jake materialized in the main control chamber, his consciousness drawn back from its exploration of the orbital platforms to focus on the approaching humans. He activated the facility's external communication arrays and spoke to the fleet for the first time in over a year. The reunion was both joyful and terrifying for the human rescue team. Jake was clearly alive and healthy, but he had been fundamentally changed by his experiences on the alien world. When he demonstrated his ability to control the planetary power grid with thought alone, directing energy flows that could power Earth's entire civilization, the implications for humanity's future became clear. Jake faced the most important decision of his transformed existence. He could return to human space and share the Vorthak technology directly, giving humanity immediate access to planetary-scale power systems and consciousness transfer capabilities. But he had learned from the Vorthak's fate that such power could destroy a civilization that was not prepared to handle it responsibly. Instead, Jake chose to establish the planet as a training center, where human engineers could gradually learn to work with alien technology under carefully controlled conditions. He had spent months designing educational protocols that would allow humans to understand Vorthak energy manipulation without risking the dangerous mental integration that had changed him so completely. The orbital installations Jake had constructed became humanity's first truly advanced technological base. Manufacturing platforms powered by the planetary grid could produce materials and devices that were impossible to create using normal human technology. Research stations provided safe environments where human scientists could study alien knowledge without exposure to the consciousness-altering effects of direct neural interface. Jake established himself as the guardian and teacher of this new human outpost, but he was no longer entirely human himself. His consciousness existed partially within the planetary grid, giving him awareness of energy flows across the entire world and access to millions of years of accumulated Vorthak knowledge. He could manifest physically when needed, but his true existence had become something larger than a single biological body. The first group of human engineers to study under Jake's guidance were amazed by what they learned about energy manipulation and consciousness transfer. However, Jake was careful to limit their exposure to the more dangerous aspects of Vorthak technology. He had developed training programs that would take decades to complete, ensuring that humanity would have time to mature and develop ethical frameworks for handling such powerful capabilities. Captain Morgan and her crew found it difficult to accept that their rescue mission had become something entirely different. They had come to save a stranded engineer, but instead they had discovered humanity's most important technological breakthrough and the person who would guide human civilization's next evolutionary step. Jake was no longer someone who needed rescuing but the architect of humanity's future among the stars. Jake used the planetary manufacturing systems to construct advanced starships for the human fleet, upgrading their vessels with gravitational drives and energy shields powered by Vorthak technology. The enhanced ships could travel between star systems in days rather than years, opening up possibilities for human expansion that had never existed before. The most significant gift Jake gave to humanity was not the technology itself, but the knowledge of how to use it safely. He had learned from the Vorthak's mistakes and developed safeguards that would prevent humans from repeating the consciousness transfer experiments that had destroyed the original builders. Future human engineers could access the power of the planetary grid without losing their individual identities. Jake's transformation had cost him his original human nature, but it had gained him something far more valuable. He had become the bridge between human ingenuity and alien capability, creating hybrid technologies that combined the best aspects of both civilizations. His modified consciousness could understand both human needs and Vorthak possibilities, allowing him to design systems that served humanity's interests while respecting the lessons of the ancient builders. The final scene of Jake's journey took place atop the highest crystal spire in the facility complex, where he stood watching human ships dock with his orbital installations for the first time. The electromagnetic storms that had once threatened his survival now danced at his command, while the planetary power grid hummed with harmonized energy that could fuel human civilization for millions of years. Jake was no longer the desperate, crash survivor who had stumbled onto this world, nor was he entirely the human engineer who had once worked aboard the UES Meridian. He had become something new and unique, a hybrid consciousness that existed between biological and digital existence, between human limitations and alien possibilities. His legacy would be measured not in the years he had survived alone, but in the centuries of human advancement he had made possible. Captain Morgan stood beside him on the crystal platform, looking up at the human ships that now shared the sky with alien technologies beyond imagination. She understood that Jake could never return to normal human life, but she also knew that his sacrifice had given humanity access to powers that would reshape their entire civilization. Jake had turned ancient ruins into the foundation of a new, golden age, transforming from a doomed engineer into the guardian of humanity's greatest treasure.